What's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? 50% of insects have disappeared since 1970. Insect population is down 27% in the last 30 years. Declining between 1 and 4% each year depending on the genus. I knew it. I've always suspected this. I never realize how many insects there are until I go camping, and they start attacking me at night. Never get that in suburbs, shows what the urban environment does for insect populations. Especially with all the artificial lights at night, insects are designed to navigate off the moon. Gecko population. Probably lead. If you get lead poisoning, even if it is from circumstances outside your control, you're just permanently damaged from that point onward. It can mess up brain functioning, lower intelligence, and so on, and there's no way to treat that. Add to that the fact that lead is freaking everywhere, and it becomes terrifying. It's everywhere because of leaded gas. 20 years after leaded gas was taken off a lot of research links it to the decrease in lead. Of course there are other socio-economic factors, but it's a bit too much of a coincidence for my taste. A CME, coronal mass ejection, is the most likely civilization-ending disaster to come from space. The sun emits them regularly, and they hit the Earth every few hundred years. The last one occurred in the 1890s, but society at the time was less susceptible to the effects. Were one to hit the Earth today, it would basically destroy all the tech infrastructure on whichever side of the planet is facing the sun at the time. This would knock the affected hemisphere back into the stupid ages, and it would take decades to recover, altering the global balance of power forever. It's only a matter of time. We could mitigate the effects, but it would be expensive, so we haven't and likely never will. At least not until the problem becomes real to people. By then it will be too late. This is a much more likely scenario than an asteroid impact. Researchers have found viruses in the Arctic permafrost that have been frozen for thousands of years. One of these viruses, pithavirus, was dormant for 30,000 years until the researchers revived it, and it infected the amoebas that were placed in the tank with it. Which of course presents a scary scenario. What happens when the ice melts away and viruses are released that haven't been in contact with humans for 10,000 plus years? When you get killed by army ants, it's not bites that kill you. It's invasion of the lungs. All onions, all veggies in the allium family, are toxic to dogs. Worst-case scenario then can develop AIHA, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, whereas the body destroys its own red blood cells. This disease is about 80% fatal. My dog caught it, we are not sure from where, but it was a primary disease, not a result of a cancer. We think he was eating leeks out of the garden. Took a week in the hospital, 2 blood transfusions, and about 6 months of meds to get him back. He started at 45 pounds, and was down to 19 pounds at the worst part of it. Also grapes. And propylene glycol is toxic for cats. I think edit. Mistook PG for PG. Airplanes are dynamically stable, but helicopters are dynamically unstable. That means, if an airplane pilot lets go of the controls of a small plane with no autopilot, if it's correctly trimmed and balanced it will keep flying level, until it runs out of fuel. If a helicopter pilot lets go of the controls, in about 2.4 seconds, it will tip over to such a degree that it is unrecoverable. We can let go of one control, the collective, for a little while by frictioning it in place to change the radio, adjust something, scratch your nose or whatever, but it's friction on, do the thing with the left hand, friction off and hand back on the collective. We fly 3 seconds away from falling out of the sky all the time. But then that's also kinda the same for bicycles, although they can only tip left and right, not every direction. Subconsciously, you are always adjusting your weight and controlling the steering to stay upright. Same thing in a heli. You balance on a column of air, and you keep balancing the whole time, just like on a bike. You don't even notice, you just do it. Late to the party, but here goes. There are weaponized strains of anthrax which can remain viable and dangerous for 40+ years after release. In 1942, the UK tested an anthrax bomb on Gruinard Island, killing a flock of sheep in days, some died in hours. Examination showed that the spores could remain active for decades and decontamination proved impossible at the time. The project was scrapped. Fast forward to 1981, an eco-terrorist group smuggled a sample off of the island and threatened the UK government with releasing it if the island wasn't decontaminated. The spores were still active and deadly. It took 4 years to plan and execute the cleanup, using 280 tons of formaldehyde in a seawater solution, and removing 7 hectares worth of soil to a depth of 3 feet, about 58,000 tons of topsoil, where the concentration was too high for the juice to do the job. The island was confirmed clean in 1990, 4 years after cleanup began. Heart muscle cells don't reproduce much in adults, roughly 1% per year. If you have an infarction or other stressor that kills those cells, then your heart won't be able to grow new cells to replace the dead ones. This is why patients with diseases like heart failure end up needing a heart transplant. Trying to get this process to happen is a major goal for many cardiac researchers. Edit. Thank you all for making this such an engaging and interesting discussion. I've been studying heart cells for 10+ years now, basic scientist, no clinical training, and it's so refreshing to read many diverse perspectives and on-point questions. When doing an autopsy, they don't put the organs back where they belong, they are all stored in the belly. Trauma can cause structural changes to your brain. PTSD is literally an injury. Trained dogs can smell when someone with PTSD is triggered. The amygdala tells the body to start producing stress hormones, and dogs are able to smell the sweating that causes. Great book on PTSD if anyone is interested. The Body Keeps the Score by Van der Kolk. Scientists don't know exactly how acetaminophen works to relieve pain and reduce fever. They have an idea, but nothing for sure. But yet it's the most commonly used pain reliever in the world. This is actually true of a large number of medications. Approximately 60%, in some reports, of the world's population have the parasite Toxoplasma gondii in their brain. For a long time it's thought to have been a benign presence, but recent statistical research shows that it may have an impact on things like levels of anger and rates of accidents and suicide. When gondii is on rats, it changes their behavior, so that they find the smell of cat urine sexually appealing. So they find cats and get eaten. In the gut of the cat the parasite can reproduce. I only recently learned that when you get sunburned, the burn isn't because of skin cell damage. The UV radiation damages the DNA. Then the skin cells decide to commit suicide and fall off, so that the damaged DNA doesn't produce cancer. I'll never be mad at my skin peeling again. This is not to say that you won't get skin cancer from sunburn because your skin peels. You absolutely will get skin cancer if you burn over and over. Source: M35 with a dozen basal cell carcinomas and 1 squamous cell carcinoma removed from my body by way of minor surgery. Have been sunburnt more times than I can remember and peel like a leper after the bad ones. The United States has lost and never recovered at least 6 nuclear devices. Prions are terrifying. They're basically zombies at a protein level. They're misshapen in such a way that causes them to misshape other proteins. Normal methods of disinfection don't work. This makes researching them a very tricky matter, as while most cases involve eating infected meat, mishandling prion samples is all it takes. Tricky part is, there is no treatment either. Once they get in you, they are 100% fatal. It has been a while since I've studied them, so this picture may be incomplete, but I do know they're always fatal. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot-on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to kill 50% of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. I say after, I mean relatively soon after, within say a day, to have an effect quite this devastating. The leaching does reduce over the month, but it's still there, and the effect of multiple dogs still allows for a terrible buildup of chemicals. Antimicrobial resistance. The bacteria are getting resistant to the drugs much faster than the rate at which we are producing new drugs. Soon we will reach a scenario when antibiotics cannot treat simple yet lethal infections. Inside the permafrost around the world there is stored about twice the amount of CO2 we currently have in our atmosphere. That's why permafrost must stop melting. Before the vaccine, the number of people who have had HPV infection, and have had at least one sexual partner, was 85% in females and 91% of males. By far the most common STI. Worth elaborating, there are a ton of strains, and most of them are relatively harmless. Only a couple produce notable symptoms or issues, so most people never have any clue they have it. An asteroid passed the Earth in September that was about 40-90 m in diameter, and we didn't see it until a day later because it traveled towards us from the direction of the Sun. It passed us at half the distance from the Earth to the Moon. Just to add a bit of context, you can fit 2 Jupiters between Earth and the Moon. Activated charcoal in foods and drinks can decrease the effectiveness of any medications you take. Those Instagrammable black foods can end up killing you if you're not careful. Oleander is one of the most poisonous plants in the world, and it's a very popular garden feature. If a kid accidentally eats some, it would not end well. Nutrition deficiencies such as iron, vitamin C have many symptoms that were uncovered in an experiment in residential school. They would have a class of indigenous children that would never get iron from foods or any intake. Another class would get the iron supplements, then compare for results. The human body temperature in developed countries is actually declining, and at the same time global warming is increasing the temperature thresholds for many fungus types. This is leading to a whole new medical issue of fungus infecting humans, and its main source of protection, body temperature, is no longer working. That body temperature is a large reason for the success of mammals all over the world. After the KT extinction, the sun was blocked and cold-blooded species couldn't raise their body temperature to kill off infections in their bodies. There is ample evidence that after KT, that fugu spread all over the world in massive quantities, which leads many to believe this led to the ascendancy of mammals on Earth. Radio Lab story about this for those of you interested in learning more and sources.
Thanks for watching.